David Liddington, ex this and that in the British government, now chairman of both RUSI and the Conservative Group for Europe. Really two linked questions, and following on from the discussion that we've just been listening to. What do David and Tom think President Biden is going to want of his European allies apropos China? I mean, I am assuming that what Biden will expect from his European allies will be more spending on defense, greater political leadership, places like Africa, Western Balkans, but also demonstrable commitment to help the United States in the region of the world that matters most to American interests. And what form of solidarity, confrontation, whatever we call it, will people be prepared to commit to? We know the UK is taking part in this combined naval force in the Indo-Pacific region. If Biden comes knocking at the door of the Berlaymont and says that I want, so we're going to have a common front in terms of, being tougher on China over trade, is that something, for example, David, which the EU would be willing to agree to? And are any of us really up for the existential challenge, which is surely technology? China 2025, no secret, they want world leadership in quantum engineering, synthetic biology, artificial intelligence, all the key 21st century technologies. And the reaction from the democratic world so far has been very sort of hit and miss and bitty in its approach. Is there any chance of a strategic approach amongst the democracies in response to that technological challenge?
Thank you very much, Sir David. I think, David, you go first this time.
Well, no surprise that as a German Christian Democrat, I might be even more critical of the last 4 years under President Trump in the United States than my dear British counterparts. The atmosphere here in Brussels is things can only get better. I mean, transatlantic... Pardon?
Only in public.
Transatlantic relations were under enormous stress test, and there's a lot of expectation in Brussels and member states' capitals that we will see a fresh start for transatlantic cooperation. But it's not about going back to the old normal, whenever the old normal was and whatever the old normal was, but it's about bringing transatlantic cooperation with a new impetus to the third decade of our 21st century. So David asked about where do we see fields of US, European, British cooperation on China? Well, I would always say that where we agree is that we share concerns as regards Chinese behavior. These need to be addressed. This includes unfair trade practice, cybersecurity, disinformation, and also the quest for technological dominance, which we have already discussed. And because I said in the beginning where perhaps German Christian Democrats will take a slightly different view than our conservative friends in the UK, but there's one point where I absolutely agree with the tough approach taken by the British, and that is when it comes to technology. We have to be very, very firm on this, that technology is one of the areas where cooperation between like-minded democratic societies would be most beneficial in order to curb Chinese dominance, not only in setting technological standards that ensure that we set the right norms and standards in this new field, but also in developing technologies under, for instance, the auspices of NATO in the field of security and defense. So I think we will see a lot of common ground now between the new US administration, the United Kingdom and Europe, and how to confront China where this is necessary.
Thank you, David. Tom, would you like to add something?
Yeah, I apologize. There's amendment after amendment going on. You don't laugh, David. This was your life too for 20 years. Look, I think David's point about NATO and Africa and China is fundamental to this cooperation. And I don't think fundamentally the NATO request for money is going to change. I think the request for various European countries to take on their responsibility in various parts of Africa and to take a whole nation or perhaps even a regional responsibility that is not new, but something that so far most European countries have failed to do. In fact, I think all European countries really have failed to do, is a request that is going to come up again from the United States. But I think that on the China cooperation, I think David and, both Davids made some very important points on technology. I think the first is that Biden is going to be looking for a national greater cooperation in terms of the alliance of democracies. And I think this is going to draw a lot on what we've seen happening in Australia and the realization that we can be undermined and picked off if we're not cooperative. But I think it also feeds straight into the technology point. Look, we're dealing with currently a China that now makes the vast majority of the world's batteries, that in many ways has cornered the market in many of the rare earths necessary for the electronic transition, and that is already dominating whatever it is now, 80-90% of computers and telephones and various other different forms of technology. So there is a major challenge here for us to reset. But I think this is where there's an opportunity for us to work with other partners. And here I think specifically of countries like Japan, which have done so much in recent years to ask for cooperation, either turning Five Eyes into Six Eyes, if you believe Minister Taro, or indeed the defense cooperation that the F-35 and many other elements emphasize. And here again, the Japanese Navy has spoken about flying F-35Bs off the decks of the Queen Elizabeth and the Prince of Wales. So a level of cooperation, perhaps naval cooperation, that Britain and Japan haven't shared since 1905. So there's a real opportunity here for a depth of a relationship that we haven't seen in a long time. And I think the last of these is the depth of relationship in technology. Look, we've touched on the question about Huawei, that for many of us was a point of contention over the last year. But I think there's a further element of cooperation as we see the energy market being increasingly dominated by China's battery companies. There is a huge opportunity for many of us to deepen cooperation over something that we still have an opportunity to increase in, and that's hydrogen. If you look at, for example, Toyota playing in the hydrogen car market already, and the UK in places like Aberdeen using hydrogen as a domestic fuel, you can see that we have an advantage and I think an opportunity to dominate another area of the green economy that would certainly see us able to compete and able to partner with others in order to make sure that China isn't the sole economic power in the next 30, 40 years.